My name is Dr. Aina Vala. I've worked in marketing for almost 15 years. I'm the flashy type, not the woman who walks into a room and turns every head. Beauty've always been good at what I do, organized, loyal, and until recently, I thought that was enough to keep things simple. My boss, Mark, had always been polite, respectful. Really, he was one of those men you'd assume had it all together. Tall. Mid-50s, silver at the temples, calm eyes that seemed to read a room before he even stepped in. He never made him feel uncomfortable, quite the opposite. There were times, I admit, when he made me feel seen, but I never thought anything of it. It's easy to convince yourself that you're imagining things when you're a woman in your 40s and used to fading into the background. It started during a late evening at the office. We were prepping for a client pitch, and most of the team had already left. I stayed behind Bess. I'm the kind of woman who double checks the details, even if no one's watching. Mark stepped into the break room while I was making coffee. Tie loosened, jacket draped over one arm. He gave me that slight smile he always did, the one that somehow made you feel like you were the only person in the world. Rachel, he said, you know you're special to this team, right? I laughed nervously and stirred my coffee, not quite turning to face him. Well, I hope he's so. I basically live here. He didn't know. He just leaned on the counter watching me. No, I mean it. You carry this place. I notice it even if no one else says anything. There was something in the way he said it. Something that pulled a thread loose inside me. I'd gone so long without Nyon really seeing me. Not as a wife. My marriage had grown cold years ago. Not as a woman, and certainly not a Simeon worthy of being noticed. I turned toward him, still holding the spoon, suddenly aware of how quiet Theophis had become. Our eyes met. His didn't move, didn't flinch. Thank you, I said, voice softer than I expected. You don't hearth it enough, do you? He asked. I felt something twist in my chest. He was right. I hadn't heard it in years. Not like that. Not with that kind of weight bend it. He didn't move closer, but hadn't have to. There was a kind of gravity pulling between us, unspoken, undeniable. I wanted to look away to break the moment, but I couldn't. I didn't want to dot instead. I asked, is that why you keep working so late? He smiled. Maybe, or maybe I just trust you more than anyone else. It wasn't a line, it wasn't flirtation. It was honest. And that somehow made it more dangerous. I left that night thinking about him in a way I hadn't before. I tried to brush it off, told myself it was just a compliment, just a kind word from a innocent man. But something had shifted. It was in the way he lingered by my desk the next morning, the way he asked about me weekend plans, about what I liked to do outside of work. He was interested, and I found myself answering in ways that surprised me. He made me laugh again, really laugh. I'd forgotten how much I needed that. And yet, I kept trying to convince myself that it was the thing. I was a married woman, even I've me husband. And I barely spoke anymore, even if I'd been sleeping on one side off the emotional bed for years. Then came the conference trip, just a couple off days out of town. The company had booked separate rooms for all the attendees, but I knew deep down the moment I saw Mark's name on the itinerary that the universe wasn't going to let this stay simple. We arrived late. The hotel was sleek, modern, one of those places where everything smells faintly like citrus and fresh linen. I was exhausted but buzzing, too aware of myself, of him. Off-hat might be waiting just by professionalism. That night, after dinner with the team, he walked me to my room. It was something small, a gesture that didn't mean anything until it did. We stood outside my door, and he hesitated. Rachel, he said, voice lower now, can I say something without crossing a line? I nodded before I even thought to hesitate. You're different, he said. I don't know how else to say it. You're not just good at what you do. You make people feel calm, safe, You make me feel that way. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. The hallway was empty, silent, but with the hum of distant elevator music. I wanted to say something clever, something to deflect, but the words didn't come. Instead, I looked at him, really looked at him. The way his shirt clung slightly to his chest, the way his eyes searched mine without pressure, without expectation. He wasn't trying to seduce me. He was just being honest. I feel it too, I whispered. Finale letting the words I kept buried find air. His eyes softened, and for a moment I thought he'd step forward, that he'd pull me into something I didn't even know I'd been waiting for, but he didn't. Instead, he just touched my arm gently like it might break. Then he said, "Good night, Rachel." I barely slept that night. My mind kept circling his words, his touch the way I'd felt for the first time in years. Alive, desired, like I mattered. I kept telling myself I crossed a line I couldn't uncross, but the strangest part was I didn't regret it. That was the beginning of everything that followed. The door left slightly ajar, and once it was open, it was impossible to close. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. I stared at the hotel ceiling, trying to gather myself, trying to separate my thoughts from the warmth still lingering on my arm where Mark had touched me. It wasn't dramatic, not some passionate movie moment. It was barely a second, but it stayed with me like a scent on skin. I moved through the day in a haze. Breakfast, meetings, presentations, doing what I always did. Staying professional, staying reliable, staying inside the lines. But I could feel his eyes on me. Not in a way that made me nervous, in a way that made me aware. It was subtle, deliberate, like he didn't want to pressure me, but couldn't help looking. During the mid-morning break, I stepped outside to get some air. The courtyard was quiet, sunlight cutting across the stone floor, a breeze lifting my hair just slightly. I thought I was alone, you know. I heard his voice behind me. I didn't sleep much last night. I turned, heart already speeding up. He was holding a cup of coffee, same as me. Booth's face looked softer in the daylight, less composed, less guarded. Me neither, I admitted. He nodded, then looked away, his jaw tightening like he was working something out in his mind. Then he turned, back to home. I wanted to be careful with this, Rachel, with you. I've seen too many men in my position cross lines for all wrong reasons. His honesty disarmed me. There was no game in his words, no ego, just sincerity. And what if it's not just about a line? I asked. What if something's already happening? His expression changed. There was relief in his eyes, maybe even a touch of fear. He stepped closer just enough that I could feel the warmth of his presence. He didn't touch me this time. I keep thinking I'm supposed to be smarter than this, he said. That you deserve better than. Some middle-aged man realizing, too late, that someone extraordinary has been right in front of him. That word extraordinary sat in my chest like a secret I didn't know I'd need that till here. For years, I'd been invisible at home, taken for granted. My husband, Alan, had stopped really seeing me long before I ever met Mark. We lived in parallel lives now, sharing meals, bedsheets, but not much else done with Mark. It felt different. I felt different, more like myself than I had in a very long time. We didn't talk much after that. The rest of the conference passed in a blur of polite conversation and professional smiles. But everything had changed between us. Even in silence, I felt tethered to something bigger than I could name. That feeling only grew stronger when we returned to the office the first Monday back. I found a small note on my desk. His handwriting clean and careful. I can't stop thinking about you. I hope that's okay. I read it 3 times before I slipped it into my purse. All day, we barely said a word to each other, but the tension, quiet, respectful, heavy with restraint, was constant. Later that week, we both stayed laddie again. It was becoming a pattern neither of us wanted to name. I stayed behind to finalize a report, and he lingered in his office longer than necessary. Eventually, I heard his footsteps behind me, soft on the carpet. Need a ride home? He asked. I looked up the room dim around us. I nodded before I could think twice. The car ride was quiet at first, the kind of quiet that hums with electricity. When he pulled up in front of my house, he didn't turn off the engine. You don't have to go in just yet, he said. I looked over at him, heart pounding. Then where would I go? He hesitated. Anywhere you want. The street wall still. My house looked dark and cold from the outside. Alan's car wasn't in the driveway. He was probably working late again or at a bar. I wasn't even sure anymore. That house didn't feel like home. Not in the way it used to. I turned back to Mark and said, drive. He didn't ask where. He just drove. We ended up by the lake on the edge. Off town, the sky was heavy with stars, the water black and still. He parked and turned to me. I don't want you to think I'm tacking advantage, he said. You're not, I said, I chose this. I'm here because I want Tobe. That's when he reached for my hand, It wasn't fast or needy. It was gentle, like he was asking for permission with every inch. Our fingers interlockedly, and in that moment, I felt more connected than I had in years. We didn't kiss, not that night. We just sat there, hands joined, silence surrounding us like a promise. I rested my head against this shoulder, and he leaned his head against mine. It was so simple, soinamate.